Welcome everyone to today's edition of One Single Story. It's April the 16th, day 106, and we're doing a song today, Psalm 141. It's probably the third time, I think, maybe this year that we would have done a song, third or fourth, something like that. And we're going to hit a stretch here soon where there'll be a lot of days where we'll be doing songs. We're in 141 today. I just read the whole song. It says, "O Lord, I am calling to you. Please hurry. Listen when I cry to you for help. Accept my prayer as incense offered to you and my upraised hands as an evening offering. Take control of what I say, O Lord, and guard my lips. Don't let me drift toward evil or take part in acts of wickedness. Don't let me share in the delicacies of those who do wrong. Let the godly strike me. It will be a kindness. If they correct me, it is a soothing medicine. Don't let me refuse it, but I pray constantly against the wicked and their deeds. When their leaders are thrown down from a cliff, and the wicked will listen to my words and find them true. Like rocks brought up by a plow, the bones of the wicked will lie scattered without burial. I look for your help, O sovereign Lord. You are my refuge. Don't let them kill me. Keep me from the traps they have set for me, from the snares of those who do wrong. Let the wicked fall into their own nets, but let me escape." So he begins this song by saying, I'm calling to you, Lord, please hurry. Listen when I cry to you for help. Accept my prayers. Typically, when you begin to pray, do you talk about, Lord, please hear what I've got to say? Or do you automatically assume God's going to hear you?
Depends on the circumstance. Most of the time, at least my thought process and approach in prayer typically is an assumption that God is listening, paying attention. Sometimes there's such a sense of urgency, at least to me, that there may be some mention of, just like David, hurry up, please hear. It's almost like you're trying to position that specific prayer as more significant than all the other ones that you pray. You want to move it up to the top of the line because of whatever the issue is. So I can at least identify with his opening.
Sheryl, what do you think? Do you ask God to listen before you talk?
I think I always assume.
Yeah,
I've never thought about it before, but I think I always assume that he is listening. But I do think that I often realize from the beginning of a prayer that there's things I need to confess before I continue.
Yeah.
To feel that, he does hear me.
It's funny. So on the day that we're recording this podcast, the actual podcast that played today, so as I was listening to it this morning, we were having a conversation about raising hands, forcing our hands to be raised. Mm-hmm. People telling us to raise our hands is what it's part of it. It wasn't the whole thing. But in verse 2, he says, my upraised hands as an evening offering. So he's praying with his hand lifted up. And this is a common thing that we're going to find. As a matter of fact, there are places in the Bible where it tells us to pray with hands lifted up.
Yeah.
Why is this significant? Why do you think the hands lifted up is a significant symbolic act when praying?
I think it's what you said. It's praise.
Mm.
To keep in mind the entire time that you're praying that's what your main purpose is.
Right.
To recognize God for who he is and all that he
does. It's an outward symbol of what should be on the inside of us. There's an act of surrender and worship. I think it displays to God, we are truly dependent on you. We're here in this moment, and I'm acknowledging not only my voice, but with my body, my posture, everything within me that I'm dependent on you. That's the reason I'm having this conversation.
Yeah. Your hands are pointed toward God. I'll be honest. So in a worship setting, music, in church, whatever, I don't find it difficult to raise my hand.
Mm-hmm.
Find almost zero inhibitions about it. But when I'm by myself, it feels weird.
When you're by yourself.
Yeah, when I'm by myself, it feels weird. When I'm praying, for me to raise my hands. It just feels weird. I do it sometimes, and I feel prompted to, but it just feels weird, and what it leads me to ask myself is, and the times when I'm in public that I do it, am I doing it for him or for other people.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, because now that you say that, I mean, sometimes there's a sense of, okay, people follow you, people follow the leader, as it were.
Right.
And, you know, if we set an example of worship, you know, sometimes if we're free to do that, then maybe it will help other people to
Right.
be free. But it does beg the question, you know, what is the real motivation?
Right. Why am I doing
behind it?
So he's the prayer he's asking. He says, "Take control of what I say and guard my lips." I've prayed that prayer a lot of times. But he says, "Don't let me drift toward evil or take part in acts of wickedness. Don't let me share in the delicacies of those who do wrong." So there are two pieces to this I want to talk about. So he says, "Don't let me drift toward evil, or don't let me drift toward sin." You know. How do we avoid sin? What are some things how does God put bumpers up to keep us from ending up in sin?
I mean, I feel like this is a good example that you're admitting it, recognizing it, and asking God to give you the ability to do that.
Just a simple acknowledgement that
Yeah.
this could be a problem.
Yeah, because I feel like that's what he's doing, is saying, I realize I'm not strong enough to know, or perhaps even be able to resist it.
Right.
So I need your help.
Yeah, I love the fact that he phrased it that way. Don't let me drift, you know, because there most things, I would say, most things. If I know it's right or wrong, I'm not going to choose to do the wrong. If it's sin, I'm not going to choose the sin intentionally. But it sure is easy to drift toward that to the point that you. That's exactly right. Where you get to that point, or even cross the line before you even realized it.
Right.
And so. You know, I think that would be a great daily prayer for all of us.
Yeah, don't let us drift.
Don't let us
He said,
drift.
"Don't let us take part in acts of wickedness," which I took to mean, I'm probably not going to initiate it.
Yeah.
But when the crowd starts
I might
moving
go
in that
along with
direction,
it.
I
Yeah,
might say, I just ain't gonna say nothing. You know, I'm gonna participate.
Yep.
But then he says, "Don't let me share in the delicacies of those who are doing wrong." That phraseology there was really interesting to me, because. And I will say the first thing that came to my mind. I don't even know why this came to my mind, but I'll say the first thing that came to my mind. He says, you know, I didn't do wrong, but don't let me enjoy the fruits of those who did wrong. So the first thing I thought of is something that I have said lots of times. If somebody won the lottery in my church, I would take the tithe.
Sure.
You know, it'd be sanctified.
Yeah.
But. And that's an oversimplification.
Say, I don't feel that way. I think I would accept tithes and offerings. Put a little more requirement on it,
but
make it spiritual.
But are there times that people do evil? So let me give a different scenario. Companies use child slave labor in other countries to make products to ship here to the United States, of which we buy at a reduced cost, or we own stock in that company and it goes up. Because are we enjoying the delicacies of sin when we participate in those things?
Yeah.
Yeah, the answer is yes. And if we have a knowledge of that and understanding, then I think we have a responsibility to remove ourselves from that. You know, you mentioned stock in a company. I know there may be many, but I know one particularly that I've heard advertised numerous times that they will screen your investments for you to make sure that they're not promoting things that we know are absolutely contrary to what the scriptures teach, that are clearly sin. Because once we get to that point, then we have to make the choice and decision what we're going to do.
Yeah, and I don't think some of those things are as clear. I think if there's these fine lines that we don't often, out of sight, out of mind. The buying the product or owning stock in a company that using child labor. Well, nobody's proven that. We haven't seen pictures of the children in there making whatever. I don't know. Sheryl, do you see any other ways maybe we enjoy the delicacies of sin without committing the sin ourselves?
I think that the consumerism is a really good example of that, because we tend to think about the product that we receive or the experience that we have when we're not thinking about the people who might be working overtime and not getting paid for it,
Right.
for all that
Or
to happen.
25 cents an hour.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think that we do enjoy
So
those
we could
things.
enjoy a $10 shirt,
Yeah.
or we could complain about something being $1.25 at the Dollar Tree, which is a whole different, I mean, that whole concept that something could be made in China, packaged, put on a boat, shipped to the United States,
Yeah.
trucked to a store, an employee put it out. For me to put one item out is worth $1 to me, but all of that happens and we still pay $1.
Yeah,
for it.
you got to ask.
We ain't got much conscience.
What happened here?
That's right. Anyway, he says, the next verse says, let the godly strike me, it will be kindness. If they correct me, it's a soothing medicine. How is the striking from a godly person like kindness? And how is it soothing like medicine?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily categorize it that it's like kindness when they strike you. Those sometimes can be difficult circumstances, but I understand, I think, what David is saying here in contrast to what he previously talked about is that we need to be in relationship not only with God but with other people, so that when there are voids or gaps in our life and people bring it to our attention, that it is beneficial for us. And I'm just being completely transparent here. That's not usually an easy process. He says if they correct me, it's soothing medicine. I typically see the medicinal side later, or it takes me a little while to process.
Way later.
Yeah, exactly, but not necessarily in the moment. But he goes on to say, don't let me refuse it. And that's certainly a prayer that I need to pray constantly, that I don't refuse wisdom and counsel, that is beneficial.
Cheryl, do you see it as kindness when a godly person strikes you?
Well, I think here in particular it speaks to David's humility, because no, we don't typically see that as a kindness, but I think, he's just admitted, I can't stay out of sin without your help, and now I need help being able to take counsel from people who are wiser than I am and who can see things. I mean, something we've talked about several times in lots of different scriptures is that we have a really hard time seeing ourselves clearly, and I think he recognizes the value in that.
Yeah, well, multiple times in David's life, he's going to need a godly person to speak to him about his own sin. Nathan, when he sins with Bathsheba, he's not going to own it until he's confronted by, a godly person. And so I do think we have to make sure we have those people in our life, because if we're not careful, we will exclude the people who strike us. Oh, you're a hitter. I don't want you. But we exclude the people who confront us, challenge us, and to our own detriment. Sometimes we don't even realize that. So he says, "Let the wicked fall into their own nets, but let me escape." Well, verse 9 says, "Keep me from the traps they have set for me, from the snares of those who do wrong. Let the wicked fall into their own nets, but let me escape." What kind of traps do the wicked set for the godly?
There are lots, but I'm trying to think of terms in modern where we live, and I would say one of the traps that is easily and often set is social media, where people say things, post things, and it's almost like bait to draw you into that. And how many times have you seen people that you would otherwise can say have a good witness and testimony get drawn into that debate, that public forum, and say things and respond in ways, and you were like, they were having a bad day, and that is easy to get drawn into, and that's just one that comes to my mind immediately.
I'll tell you something funny that happened recently, and I meant to share it with the staff, and I hadn't, so I'll do it when we're done recording. But there was a conflict going on Facebook, and somebody inserted one of my sermon quotes
Nice.
into it. And I mean, when I say there was a conflict, I mean, they're dropping the F-bomb and everything. And somebody inserts this sermon quote with the photo and everything.
Okay.
Like, why you
Yeah.
throw me in the middle of this?
I'm like,
To make their point.
This was cracking me up. Anyway, you know, I think that there are lots of traps that get set. You know, we talk about drugs, some drugs being gateway drugs. You know, they open the door for us to fall into deeper traps. I think there are compromises that get nudged away, not just through social media, but through movies and media in general, that they introduce this concept, and it for a period of time it's an outlier,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it becomes prominent. It
Yeah.
becomes the thing that,
Mhm.
there's no numbers of those things that we could talk about. And I think what they're doing is, okay, I can ignore it if it shows up once every month or once every 6
Mhm.
months, but they keep reeling us in to where, okay, this is normal. Okay, it must be normal because it's there.
Yeah.
And it's-
Go ahead.
You saying that makes me think of something I've seen with several different things over the past few years, and that is you know, you see this image or you're fed some information that you find highly offensive and a little bit shocking, and then over time it becomes more and more and more frequent to the point that it's not shocking anymore,
Right.
and it becomes part of the fabric of our culture.
Mhm.
And it's gone from something that you didn't think was okay to something that is just an everyday acceptance now, and it becomes part of, you know, people's lives, part of their conscience, you know, the way you think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a real big extreme. But when I was growing up, so you would have had the Lucille Ball show. So Lucy and Ricky never slept in the same bed because it wasn't culturally acceptable for you to see that. And you know, in the last 10 years, we get 50 Shades of Grey. You know, that it just completely the opposite. It's far the opposite ways you could go. That everything's acceptable in public view. And so I think it becomes this continual baiting that we reel people in with that.
Yeah, and related to that, in the culture and advertisement, you know, some of the traps, financial traps, you know, people living beyond their means, living in the moment. You deserve it. You know, here's this credit at 24%. That's a trap.
Yeah.
You know, finances can be a trap if we follow the.
Well, even if you go to buy a car, I have a pet peeve, and I'll tell if I go to buy a car, if you come in here and show me a payment, I'm going to get up and walk out.
Instead of telling me what it costs.
Right, because 99% of the time, when they walk in with a deal sheet, they say, the question they ask you before they go away to make a deal sheet is,
What kind of monthly
what kind of
payment
payment?
do you
Yeah,
want?
what kind of monthly
Do
payment
you want it to be? Where do you want
And
it to be?
and I tell them, if you come back in here with a payment and don't tell me what the car costs, I'm walking out. Like, we ain't even going to have a conversation. Because they bait people in to, I can afford $200 a month for 9,670 months.
Yeah.
The
How
car,
many years do they take this out to now?
They-
It's something crazy.
I think there's as far as out as 84 months.
there's at least 84
Yeah,
months.
at least.
Which
It may
is
be
sad.
more now, which is crazy.
They
to
may
the
be
point that your
96.
car's lost all its value.
Oh yeah, completely.
Or
If
fall
it's
apart.
even running.
Yeah.
And they bait you in, you know, with this is innocent. It's just
Yeah.
$200 a month or
Right.
$300 a month. When in reality, you're gonna be so upside down that the next time you want to do it, they're gonna have to tack on more when you go
That's
buy
right.
the next car, and it's just gonna get a deeper and deeper hole. And you know that may not be sin, that may be wisdom, but it's a trap. It's still a
Yeah.
trap.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and he said, keep me from them.
Yeah, good. All right, well, let's close in prayer today. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for godly people in our lives that strike us occasionally, that speak into our lives, push back about the things that don't look like you, don't reveal your presence and your purity in our life. May God, we be willing to listen to those people. May we surround ourselves with godly people, and may we avoid the traps of sin. May we be aware of the delicacies that we may partake in that may be harming other people that we haven't thought about. Give us wisdom and clarity and discernment in each of those situations to avoid the traps of the enemy. In Jesus' name.